You wake up in a world without electricity, without plumbing, without medicine, and yet somehow people survive. Not just for a few years, but for centuries. We often imagine medieval peasants as helpless, trudging through mud while praying for mercy. But the truth is far more impressive. These people weren't victims of their environment. They mastered it. Through trial, error, and sheer necessity, they built a system of survival that outlasted empires. They learned how to preserve food without refrigeration, how to find and purify water without filters, how to heal wounds without antibiotics, and even how to read the sky for weather long before the invention of science. Their tricks weren't magic. They were knowledge, born from hunger, war, and desperation. Every technique was tested by death itself. If it didn't work, people died. If it did, their children remembered. Today, we've forgotten most of what they knew. We depend on machines, networks, and convenience to keep us alive. But the Middle Ages had none of that, and they endured. In this video, you'll rediscover the forgotten survival wisdom of the Middle Ages, knowledge that might just save your life if the modern one ever falls apart. Because when civilization collapses, the smartest survivors won't be the strongest. They'll be the ones who remember how to live like it's the 13th century. Imagine the year is 1350. Winter is closing in, and your village granary is nearly empty. There's no grocery store, no canned food, no freezers humming in the dark. What you have, what you keep alive, depends on what you know. The people of the Middle Ages turned preservation into an art of survival. Salt was their greatest weapon. Coastal and inland communities alike cured fish and meat in rock salt or heavy brine. Salt drew out moisture, the enemy of preservation, and slowed the spread of bacteria. In England, laws like the assize of bread and ale even regulated how salt and brine could be sold, proof that life literally depended on it. Then came smoke. In the corners of old villages, wooden smokehouses glowed day and night. Meat, cheese, and fish hung from hooks as smoke wrapped them in a thin, protective armor. Carbon compounds from the fire acted as a primitive antibacterial shield, slowing decay for months. Archaeologists in York and Lubeck have uncovered these ancient smoke chambers, their blackened beams still scented with centuries of survival. But salt and smoke weren't enough. When the crops failed, fermentation took over. Cabbage became early sauerkraut. Grains became ale. Milk became cheese. Fermentation didn't just preserve food, it transformed it. Ale kept nutrients stable long after the harvest. Sourdough starters, kept alive like family heirlooms, ensured bread could rise even in famine years. And for grain, people learned to seal it in clay or wooden bins lined with ash, a simple trick that kept insects and rot at bay. French agricultural manuals from the 12th century describe these methods in detail. Evidence that survival wasn't chaos, it was science, before science had a name. The medieval kitchen was more than a place to cook. It was a laboratory of endurance. Every handful of salt, every breath of smoke, every jar of fermenting cabbage was a silent act of defiance against hunger and death. They didn't just feed themselves, they engineered survival, one meal at a time. Now imagine you've made it through the winter, but the thaw brings a new threat: water. Clear, cold, and deadly. In the medieval world, drinking water was one of the most dangerous acts of daily life. Wells and rivers shimmered like life itself, but beneath that surface lurked invisible killers: dysentery, cholera, typhoid. And yet, somehow, people survived. They learned to outsmart the water. The simplest trick, and perhaps the most brilliant, was to brew it.
Monks across Europe, from St. Gall in Switzerland to Westminster in England, perfected the art of small beer. Weak in alcohol but strong in safety, it purified water through boiling and fermentation. Every sip of that ale was a small victory over bacteria no one even knew existed. Even children drank it daily. It wasn't indulgence, it was survival. But monasteries didn't stop there. Many built early filtration systems centuries before the word filter even existed. In monastic gardens and castle courtyards, people used layers of sand, crushed charcoal, and linen cloth to strain out visible impurities before boiling. The process removed dirt, debris, and even some microbes, a technique so effective that modern survivalists still use the same principle today. City authorities, too, began to understand cause and effect, even if they didn't yet grasp why. Medieval civic charters in England and Germany included laws requiring latrines to be built at least a certain distance from wells. It was rudimentary public health, born not from science, but from painful experience. And when water couldn't be trusted, people turned to herbs and vinegar. Vinegar washed vessels and killed microbes before they spread. Infusions of rosemary, sage, or thyme served as natural disinfectants, recipes found in household manuals and the ancient leech books. The result was a society that didn't know what bacteria were, but fought them anyway. Their instincts, honed over generations of plague and famine, kept them alive through sheer observation and adaptation. It's ironic, really. We filter, pasteurize, and chlorinate our water today, but the principles we use were born in medieval kitchens and monasteries. The technology changed, the logic didn't. The people of the Middle Ages didn't just survive their world, they decoded it one sip at a time.
You cut your hand while chopping wood. There are no antibiotics, no hospitals, no sterile bandages. Infection isn't a risk, it's a death sentence. Yet in the medieval world, you wouldn't just wait to die. You'd fight back, using medicine born from experience, not theory. And some of it, astonishingly, worked. Honey was one of the most valuable substances in medieval medicine. Surgeons from the 14th century, like those following Henry de Mondeville's Surgeon's Handbook, used it to dress open wounds. They didn't know about bacteria, but they saw results. Wounds treated with honey healed faster, stayed cleaner, and resisted infection. Today, science confirms what they discovered by accident. Honey's natural acidity and osmotic effect kill bacteria while sealing out new ones. Garlic and onions were another secret weapon. In the Leech Book of Bald, written around the 10th century, these plants were crushed into poultices and applied to abscesses and infected cuts. It might sound primitive, but allicin, a compound released when garlic is crushed, has proven antibacterial properties. Nearly 1,000 years later, modern medicine would rediscover what medieval peasants already knew. Willow bark, too, held a quiet genius. Healers boiled it into tea to reduce fever and pain. Centuries later, chemists would extract its active ingredient, salicin, and turn it into aspirin. Every sip of that bitter brew was a moment of relief in an age without anesthesia. Then there were plants like yarrow and comfrey. Yarrow to stop bleeding. Its very name comes from the Old English yerwe, meaning healer. Comfrey to knit bones and close wounds, referenced in the Herbarium Apulei Platonici. These weren't mystical charms, they were working pharmacology, rooted in observation and repetition. For all their superstition and ignorance, medieval healers built a foundation of practical medicine. They lacked microscopes, but they had eyes, and those eyes watched who lived and who didn't. They learned from corpses and survivors alike. Their treatments didn't cure everything. Many died screaming despite their efforts. But every time honey stopped an infection or willow bark eased the pain, they proved something extraordinary. Even in an age of darkness, knowledge was still light. And that light, passed from monk to midwife to traveler, kept humanity alive long enough to discover the science behind its own survival.
Imagine standing alone on a medieval road, miles from the nearest village, no map, no compass, and the sun sinking fast. You'd think you were lost, but a peasant, a monk, or a sailor from that world wouldn't panic. They knew how to read the earth itself. Navigation in the Middle Ages wasn't guesswork, it was memory, instinct, and a mastery of natural patterns. The North Star, Polaris, was their anchor. Travelers and sailors used its fixed position in the night sky to orient themselves. They learned to track the arc of the sun during the day and to mark its shadows for direction and time. In monasteries and on trade routes, manuscripts like Thomas of Contempores de Naturis Rerum recorded these early techniques, a medieval form of astronomy shaped by survival. Weather prediction, too, came from observation, not superstition. Farmers studied the sky, yes, but also the behavior of animals. Birds flying low meant a storm was coming because of air pressure changes. Bees disappearing into their hives early signaled rain. Even livestock grew restless before a shift in the wind. These weren't omens, they were centuries of empirical data stored in human memory. In monasteries, time itself was measured by ingenuity. When mechanical clocks were rare, monks used candle clocks, candles marked with measured lines that burned hour by hour, or simple water clocks, which dripped with remarkable precision. These inventions didn't just tell time, they regulated prayer, labor, and even medical treatments. And then there was fire, the most essential tool of all. Medieval people carried their own ignition kits, flint, steel, and a small bundle of char cloth or dried fungus called amadou, capable of catching a single spark. Archaeologists have found these in Norse and English settlements, the medieval equivalent of a survival lighter. One strike, one ember, and you had warmth, light, and protection against the dark. These weren't skills in the modern sense, they were reflexes, learned by necessity. You didn't need to be a scholar to navigate by stars or sense a storm, you just needed to pay attention. The people of the Middle Ages lived in tune with the planet, not because they wanted to, but because their lives depended on it. They could read the sky, the soil, and the silence before the rain the way we read screens today. And maybe that's their greatest secret. They survived not by conquering nature, but by listening to it.
The people of the Middle Ages lived in a world that wanted them dead, and yet they endured, not through luck and not through strength, but through knowledge. They didn't have science as we know it. No thermometers, no microscopes, no electricity. But what they did have was something we've nearly forgotten, a deep, instinctive relationship with their environment. They studied the earth, the sky, their bodies, and the slow, painful rhythm of trial and error. And from that, they built a code of survival that still works. They salted, smoked, and fermented food long before preservatives had a name. They brewed beer not for pleasure, but because it was cleaner than water. They filtered that same water through sand and charcoal, the same technique we now call biofiltration. They healed wounds with honey and herbs that modern science now validates as antibacterial and anti-inflammatory. They told time by candles, found north by the stars, and started fires with stone and steel. Every act was simple, and yet every act was genius. We look back at the Middle Ages and see dirt, ignorance, and superstition, but hidden beneath that grime was a knowledge so practical, so effective, that humanity survived for centuries without electricity, plastic, or modern medicine. They didn't just adapt to their harsh world, they thrived inside it. And maybe in our age of endless comfort, that's the lesson we've forgotten. We think survival means technology, but it really means awareness. The ability to listen, to learn, to work with the world rather than against it.
Because if the power went out tomorrow, if the cities went dark and the machines went silent, those who remembered what the Middle Ages knew, how to make fire, clean water, safe food, and simple medicine, wouldn't panic. They'd just get to work. The people of the medieval world weren't primitive. They were prepared. And if civilization ever fell again, they'd be the ones who lived.